The machines were still beeping when I opened my eyes. Antiseptic scents burned my nostrils, mingling with the metallic tang of blood that seemed to linger despite the hospital's aggressive cleanliness. My throat felt like sandpaper, and each breath came with a sharp stab between my ribs. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everyone in a sickly pallor that made even the nurses look like ghosts. "She's awake," someone said, their voice echoing as if from the end of a tunnel. I tried to sit up but found my body betraying me. Pain radiated from my chest, spreading like wildfire through my limbs. The memory of screeching tires, shattering glass, and the sickening crunch of metal against metal flashed through my mind. "Easy, Miss Harper." A nurse appeared at my bedside, her gentle hands guiding me back down. "You've been in an accident. You're at Memorial Hospital." I nodded, wincing as the movement sent another wave of pain through my skull. "My daughter?" The question came out as a rasp, barely audible. The nurse's face softened with compassion. "She's in the pediatric ICU. She's stable, but—" She hesitated, and my heart dropped into my stomach. "I need to see her." I struggled against the tubes and wires tethering me to the bed. "You need to rest. You've suffered significant injuries. 3 broken ribs, a concussion, and you required emergency surgery to stop internal bleeding. You're lucky to be alive." Lucky wasn't the word I would use. Not when my 5-year-old daughter was somewhere in this hospital fighting for her life while I lay here, helpless. Not when we had no insurance to cover what would surely be astronomical medical bills. Not when I had just been fired from my waitressing job for missing too many shifts to care for Lily when she was sick. "Please," I begged, tears burning trails down my cheeks. "I need to see my daughter." The nurse sighed. "I'll speak with the doctor, but first, there's something else." She fidgeted with her clipboard. "The police are waiting to talk to you about the accident." My stomach twisted into knots. The accident. The memory was fragmented. Headlights coming toward us too fast, swerving to avoid the collision, the guardrail giving way as our car tumbled down the embankment. I remembered screaming Lily's name as darkness engulfed us. "And," the nurse continued, lowering her voice, "you said something while you were unconscious. You kept asking for someone, a Mr. Castellano." My blood turned to ice. The name hung in the air like a death sentence. "I don't know anyone by that name," I lied, my voice steadier than I expected. The nurse looked unconvinced. "Well, you were quite insistent. You said he was the only one who could help Lily." "I was delirious," I said, looking away. "I don't remember saying that." She shrugged. "The police will be in shortly." After she left, I closed my eyes, fighting back tears of frustration and fear. Dominic Castellano. Even thinking his name sent a chill down my spine. 5 years had passed since I'd fled from his world, pregnant and terrified. 5 years of looking over my shoulder, of moving from city to city, of using my maiden name and paying for everything in cash. 5 years of protecting Lily from the truth about her father. And now, in my most vulnerable moment, I had apparently called for him. The irony wasn't lost on me. The soft click of the door opening roused me from my thoughts. I expected to see a police officer, but instead, a man in an impeccable charcoal suit entered. He wasn't particularly tall, but something in his presence filled the room. He moved with the quiet confidence of someone used to being obeyed, his posture alert yet relaxed. A bulge beneath his jacket suggested he was armed. Behind him stood another man, much larger, who positioned himself by the door, eyes scanning the room with practiced efficiency. My heart hammered against my broken ribs. Not police. Dominic's men. The first man approached my bed. "Miss Harper." His voice was professionally cordial. "My employer would like to speak with you. How did you find me?" My mouth was dry, words sticking to my tongue. "You called for him." He raised an eyebrow, as if surprised I didn't remember. "The hospital contacted Mr. Castellano after finding your old employment records at his restaurant. Apparently, you were quite adamant that he be notified." I closed my eyes, cursing my unconscious self. I must have been desperate indeed to have asked for Dominic, of all people. But then, who else could help us? I had no family, few friends, and less than $200 to my name. Dominic, despite everything, had resources. And Lily, his daughter, though he didn't know it, needed those resources now. "Where is he?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. On his way. The man checked his watch. He'll be here within the hour. My stomach lurched. 5 years of running, of hiding, of building a life for Lily and myself. All undone by a single car accident. Your daughter is being moved to a private room, the man continued. Mr. Castellano's personal physician is reviewing her case. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over me. Gratitude and dread, relief and terror. Dominic was already taking control, just as he always had. I want to see her, I insisted, pushing myself up despite the pain. The man hesitated, then nodded. I'll arrange it. Within 15 minutes, I was being wheeled to a different wing of the hospital, my IV stand rolling alongside. The security presence was unmistakable. Men in suits positioned at intervals along the corridor, speaking quietly into earpieces. Dominic never went anywhere without an entourage of protection, and apparently, that security now extended to Lily and me. The room they brought me to was private and luxurious by hospital standards. Lily lay in a bed that seemed too large for her tiny frame, her face pale beneath a tangle of dark curls. Dominic's curls. Tubes and wires connected her to machines that beeped and hummed, monitoring every breath, every heartbeat. A doctor I didn't recognize stood reviewing her chart. Lily, I whispered, reaching for her hand. The doctor looked up. Mrs. Castellano. Harper, I corrected automatically. Emma Harper. He looked momentarily confused but continued. Miss Harper, then. Your daughter has suffered trauma to her spinal cord. We won't know the full extent of the damage until the swelling subsides, but... He hesitated. Tell me. My voice cracked. There's a possibility of partial paralysis. We're doing everything we can, but she'll need specialized care, possibly surgery. I tightened my grip on Lily's small hand. My brilliant, energetic daughter, who loved to dance around our tiny apartment, who raced through playground obstacles with fearless abandon. The thought of her mobility being limited was unbearable. Whatever she needs, I said. I'll find a way. The doctor nodded, though his expression betrayed his doubt. He knew, as I did, that the kind of care Lily needed would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Money I simply didn't have. I sat beside Lily's bed for what felt like hours, whispering promises I didn't know how to keep, when a shift in the atmosphere alerted me to a new presence. The guards straightened, the medical staff retreated, and I felt him before I saw him. A prickling awareness that had never quite faded, even after 5 years. Dominic Castellano stepped into the room, and time seemed to stop. He was exactly as I remembered, and somehow completely different. The same olive skin, the same dark eyes that missed nothing, the same full mouth that could shift from cruel to kind in an instant. But there were new lines at the corners of those eyes, a sprinkling of gray at his temples that hadn't been there before. The cut of his bespoke suit emphasized the breadth of his shoulders, the trim waist, the physical power he kept carefully leashed. He didn't look at me at first. His eyes were fixed on Lily, an unreadable expression on his face as he approached her bed. He studied her with an intensity that made me want to throw myself between them, to shield her from his scrutiny. But I remained frozen, watching as he reached out with unexpected gentleness to brush a curl from her forehead. Only then did he turn to me, his gaze sweeping over my injured body, cataloging every bruise, every bandage. Something flickered in his eyes, concern, anger, possession, before his expression settled into the controlled mask I knew so well. Emma. Just my name, spoken in that deep, slightly accented voice. It shouldn't have affected me after all this time, after everything that had happened between us. But my treacherous body remembered him, remembered the safety I'd once found in his arms, before I'd discovered the truth about his business, his world. Dominic. My voice was steadier than I'd expected. Thank you for helping with Lily, but once she's stable, you'll what? He interrupted, moving closer to my wheelchair. Run again? Hide my daughter from me for another 5 years? My heart stuttered. How did you... No. A humorless smile curved his lips. I've known for years, Emma. He reached into his jacket and withdrew a small photo. My breath caught as he held it out. It was Lily, about 3 years old in the picture, playing at a park I recognized from the small town in Oregon where we'd lived briefly. Did you really think I wouldn't find you? That I wouldn't recognize my own blood? The room seemed to spin around me. If you knew, why didn't you come for you? He tucked the photo away, his movements deliberate. I was giving you time, space. I thought eventually you'd come back on your own. His jaw tightened. I didn't anticipate it would take my daughter nearly dying for that to happen. Shame and defiance warred within me. I was protecting her. From me? The edge in his voice could have cut glass. I would never harm my own child. But the people around you would, I countered. Your enemies. The life you lead. He didn't deny it. Instead, he moved to the window, looking out at the city lights. He seemed almost vulnerable. The powerful Mafia boss momentarily replaced by just a man. A man who had discovered he had a daughter. The doctor says she'll need specialized care, I said, breaking the silence. I can't afford it. That's why I called for you, I think. But once she's better, you're not going anywhere. He turned back to me, all traces of vulnerability gone. Neither of you are. A chill ran down my spine. You can't keep us prisoner, Dominic. Prisoner? He laughed, the sound devoid of humor. Is that what you think this is? I'm offering protection, security, everything you and Lily need. At what cost? He moved closer, until I could smell his familiar cologne. Sandalwood and something darker. Uniquely him. He crouched beside my wheelchair, bringing his face level with mine. His hand came up to cup my cheek, and I hated myself for leaning into his touch, even slightly. You know the cost, Emma, he said softly. You always have. Before I could respond, a commotion outside the door drew his attention. One of his men entered, speaking in rapid Italian. Dominic's expression darkened. He replied sharply, then turned back to me. It seems the other driver from the accident has connections to the Vasquez family, he said, his voice deceptively calm. This may not have been an accident at all. My blood ran cold. The Vasquez family, Dominic's chief rivals in the city's criminal underworld, if they had discovered who Lily was. I need to move you both to a more secure location, Dominic said, already giving orders to his men. Now. But Lily can't be moved. She's... My medical team says otherwise. His tone brooked no argument. They've arranged everything. We leave in 20 minutes. I looked at my daughter, so small and vulnerable in the hospital bed. Then at Dominic, powerful and dangerous, yet the only one who could truly protect her now. 5 years ago, I'd fled from his world to keep Lily safe. Now, I was willingly stepping back into it for the same reason. I had no choice, and Dominic knew it. As his men prepared for our departure, he leaned close again, his lips brushing my ear. Welcome home, cara mia, he whispered. This time you won't escape so easily. The private hospital wing felt like a fortress. Security cameras monitored every angle, and Dominic's men patrolled the corridors with practiced vigilance. I sat beside Lily's bed, watching her chest rise and fall in shallow breaths. The machines surrounding her beeped steadily, their constant rhythm both reassuring and terrifying. She needs to rest, Dr. Kaufman, Dominic's personal physician, had told me. The next 24 hours are critical. I hadn't left her side since we'd been transferred from the public hospital 3 days ago. My own injuries, the broken ribs, the concussion, the surgical incision, protested every movement, but I ignored them. Physical pain was preferable to the anguish of seeing my daughter like this. You should sleep, Dominic's voice came from behind me, startling me from my vigil. I turned to find him leaning against the doorframe, his tie loosened, a 5 o'clock shadow darkening his jaw. Despite the casual stance, his eyes remained sharp, constantly scanning the room, always alert, always calculating. I'm fine, I replied, turning back to Lily. You're exhausted, he countered, moving into the room. You won't help her by collapsing yourself. His logic was infuriating because it was correct. I felt stretched thin, like a rubber band ready to snap. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw the accident again. The headlights, the crash, Lily's scream cut short. The specialists arrive tomorrow, Dominic continued, standing on the opposite side of Lily's bed. The best pediatric neurologist from Johns Hopkins, and a spinal rehabilitation expert from Switzerland. I nodded, grateful despite myself. Whatever else he was, Dominic spared no expense when it came to those under his protection. And Lily, his blood, would receive nothing but the best. "Thank you," I said. The words inadequate but necessary. His eyes met mine across Lily's sleeping form. "She has my mother's nose," he observed quietly, "and my grandfather's chin." The simple observation, so domestic and ordinary, caught me off guard. For a moment, he wasn't Dominic Castellano, feared Mafia boss whose name was whispered in the city's darkest corners. He was just a father seeing his daughter's face for the first time. "She has your temper too," I admitted. "And your stubbornness." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Poor child. The moment of shared parenthood hung between us, fragile as spun glass. Then his phone vibrated, and he stepped away to take the call, his voice dropping to a harsh murmur as he spoke rapid Italian. When he returned, his expression had hardened. "We've identified the driver," he said. "He works for Vasquez, as suspected." My throat tightened. So it wasn't an accident. "No." His jaw clenched. "They were targeting my restaurant. You happened to be driving past at the wrong moment." The irony wasn't lost on me. 5 years running from Dominic's dangerous world, only to be caught in its crossfire anyway. "They don't know about Lily," Dominic continued. "And they won't." The threat in his voice was unmistakable. "I've arranged for additional security. You won't leave this building until I've resolved this situation." I recognized the euphemism for what it was. Resolution in Dominic's world often involved violence. "I don't want that life for her," I said quietly, stroking Lily's small hand. "That's why I left." Dominic's expression darkened. "You left because you were afraid." "Of course I was afraid. I found out I was pregnant the same night I watched you beat a man half to death in your restaurant's back room." His eyes flashed. "He was a federal informant who endangered 20 of my people. You didn't stay long enough to hear the explanation." "There's no explanation that makes that world safe for a child, Dominic." He moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the sterile hospital room. "And yet here we are, your daughter, our daughter, lying injured because you chose to live unprotected." The accusation stung because a part of me wondered if he was right. Would Lily have been safe if I'd stayed? Would Dominic's security have prevented the accident? The questions had no answers, only consequences. A soft moan from Lily interrupted our standoff. Her eyelids fluttered, and both Dominic and I froze, watching as our daughter regained consciousness for the first time since the surgery. "Mommy?" Her voice was barely a whisper. I leaned forward, ignoring the pain in my ribs. "I'm here, baby. Mommy's right here." Her eyes, dark like her father's, focused on me with difficulty. "Hurts." "I know, sweetheart. The doctors are helping you feel better." Her gaze drifted past me, landing on Dominic. No recognition flickered in her expression, only childish curiosity. "Who's that?" The question hung in the air like a physical thing. I glanced at Dominic, uncertain how to introduce him. How do you tell a 5-year-old that the father she's never known is suddenly standing at her bedside? Dominic stepped forward, his movements deliberately gentle, non-threatening. "Hello, Lily. My name is Dominic. I'm an old friend of your mother's." Lily studied him with the frank assessment only children can manage. "You look like the princes in my storybook," she declared finally. A surprised laugh escaped him, genuine and unguarded. In that moment, I glimpsed the man I'd fallen for 5 years ago. Charming, unexpectedly warm beneath the dangerous exterior. "Is that so?" he asked her, smiling. She nodded, then winced as the movement caused her pain. "My legs feel funny," she whispered, fear creeping into her voice. "That's because you were hurt in the accident," I explained, keeping my voice steady despite the dread pooling in my stomach. "But the doctors are helping you." Lily's lower lip trembled. "Can I walk?" The question broke my heart. I looked helplessly at Dominic, who stepped in smoothly. "Not yet, Piccola," he said, using the Italian endearment naturally. "First, you need to rest and get stronger. Then we'll work on walking. Promise?" She fixed him with a trusting gaze that made my chest ache. "I promise." The vow rang with absolute certainty. In that moment, I knew Dominic would move heaven and earth to fulfill his promise to his daughter. Dr. Kaufman entered, alerted by the change in Lily's monitors. After examining her and administering pain medication, he signaled for us to step outside. "Her responses are encouraging," he said, keeping his voice low. "But as we suspected, there's damage to the lower spinal column. With intensive therapy, she may regain partial mobility, but..." "But what?" Dominic demanded. The doctor hesitated. "Full recovery is unlikely, I'm sorry." The words hit me like physical blows. My vibrant, active daughter, who loved to dance and run and climb, now facing a future of limited mobility. A sob rose in my throat, and I pressed my hand to my mouth to stifle it. Dominic's arm came around me, supporting me when my knees threatened to buckle. For once, I didn't resist his touch. I needed the strength he offered, even as I hated myself for the weakness. "What treatment do you recommend?" Dominic asked, his voice steady despite the tension radiating from him. The doctor outlined a comprehensive plan involving surgeries, specialized equipment, and months of rehabilitation at an exclusive Swiss clinic. The cost would be astronomical, but Dominic nodded as if it were inconsequential. "Make the arrangements," he ordered. "I want the best for her." "Of course, Mr. Castellano." After the doctor left, Dominic turned to me, his arms still around my waist. "I'll take care of her, Emma, of both of you." I pulled away, wrapping my arms around myself. "You can't fix everything with money and power, Dominic." "No," he agreed, surprising me. "But I can give her every possible chance at recovery, which is more than you could do alone." The harsh truth hung between us. I had nothing. No savings, no insurance, no resources to give Lily the care she desperately needed. Dominic had everything, including now leverage over me. "I need to get back to her," I said, avoiding his gaze. He caught my wrist as I turned away. "We need to talk about what happens next." "Next?" "When she's stable enough to travel, you'll both come home with me." Home. The word conjured images of Dominic's sprawling estate on the outskirts of the city, a place of luxury and danger in equal measure. A gilded cage. "We can discuss that later," I said, pulling free of his grip. His eyes narrowed. "There's nothing to discuss, Emma. You have no means to support her medical care. No safe place to recover. And now that Vasquez knows I'm interested in you, you're both targets." "Targets because of you," I countered. "Yes," he admitted readily. "And I'm the only one who can protect you from that reality." Before I could respond, one of his security men approached, whispering something in his ear. Dominic's expression hardened into something cold and deadly. "What is it?" I asked. "Vasquez is making inquiries about you and Lily at the hospital where you were first treated." His voice was flat, controlled, but I recognized the rage simmering beneath the surface. "Stay with our daughter. I need to handle this. Our daughter." The casual claim sent a shiver through me. "Don't go back to her room right away," he continued. "Your face shows everything you're feeling and she'll be frightened. Take a moment." The consideration surprised me, as did the accuracy of his assessment. I nodded, watching as he strode down the corridor, already issuing orders to his men, the mantle of the Mafia boss settling over him like a second skin. I sank onto a nearby bench, the full weight of my situation crashing down on me. Lily needed specialized care I couldn't provide. Dominic's enemies had inadvertently put us in their crosshairs, and Dominic himself, the man I'd fled from, the father of my child, now held all the cards. 5 years of independence, of building a life for Lily and myself, erased in an instant. Now I faced an impossible choice. Reject Dominic's help and deny Lily her best chance at recovery, or accept it and surrender our freedom. As I sat there, a nurse approached with a tablet. "Miss Harper, Mr. Castellano asked me to show you something." She handed me the device, which displayed security camera footage. My breath caught as I recognized the scene. Dominic's men escorting a handcuffed man through an underground parking garage. The driver who had caused our accident. The message was clear. Dominic had him. What happened next would depend on many things, including, perhaps, my cooperation. I returned to Lily's room, composing my face into a reassuring smile as I entered. She had fallen asleep again, the pain medication pulling her under. I sat beside her bed, taking her small hand in mine. "What am I going to do?" I whispered to her sleeping form. But I already knew the answer. For Lily, I would do anything. Even return to the world I'd fled. Even make a deal with the devil I'd never stopped loving. The Castellano estate emerged from the morning mist like something from a fairy tale. All stone and ivy, surrounded by meticulously landscaped gardens and an imposing wrought iron fence. Security cameras perched discreetly at strategic points, their blinking red lights the only hint that this was no ordinary mansion, but a fortress disguised as a home. It had been 2 weeks since the accident. 2 weeks of hospital rooms and specialists, of Lily's brave smiles and midnight tears. Her condition had stabilized enough for transfer, and Dominic had insisted we come here rather than the Swiss clinic. "She needs family first," he'd said. "The specialists will come to us." I stood now at the window of Lily's new room, watching as Dominic walked the grounds with his security chief. Even from a distance, his authority was unmistakable. The way his men deferred to him, the alertness in his posture, the subtle scan of his surroundings with each step. "Is this our new house, Mommy?" Lily asked from her bed, specially designed to provide both comfort and the medical support she needed. I turned to her, forcing a smile. "For now, sweetheart. It's like a castle." Her eyes, so like her father's, sparkled with childish wonder. "And Mr. Dominic is like the king." The observation was uncomfortably accurate. Dominic ruled his domain with absolute authority, his word law to everyone from his security team to the household staff. "Does that make us the princesses?" Lily continued, oblivious to my discomfort. I sat beside her, smoothing her dark curls. "I suppose it does." She beamed. Then her expression grew serious. "Is Mr. Dominic going to fix my legs?" My heart twisted. "The doctors are going to help you get better. Mr. Dominic is making sure you have the very best doctors." "I like him," she declared. "He doesn't talk to me like I'm a baby." No, Dominic had never condescended to anyone. It was one of the qualities that had first drawn me to him. His direct manner, the respect he showed to everyone from restaurant dishwashers to business associates, at least until they betrayed him. Then his mercy evaporated like morning dew under a harsh sun. A knock at the door interrupted our conversation. Maria, the housekeeper, entered with a tray of food. "Lunch for the little one," she announced, smiling warmly at Lily. "Mr. Castellano said you like macaroni and cheese?" Lily nodded enthusiastically. "With extra cheese," Maria laughed. "Just as he ordered." The casual mention of Dominic's attention to such details unsettled me. He'd clearly been gathering information about Lily's preferences, integrating himself into her life with calculated precision. "Miss Harper," Maria continued, "Mr. Castellano requests your presence in his study once Miss Lily is settled for her afternoon rest." My stomach tightened. I'd managed to avoid being alone with Dominic since our arrival, but I'd known this conversation was coming. The reckoning. "Tell him I'll be there," I replied, helping Lily with her lunch. An hour later, after Lily had fallen asleep, I made my way through the mansion's winding corridors. The house was both familiar and foreign. I'd spent time here in the early days of our relationship, but always as a guest, never fully belonging. Now, I wasn't sure what I was. Not quite a prisoner, but certainly not free to leave. Dominic's study door stood open, but I knocked anyway, a small assertion of boundaries. "Come in, Emma." His voice carried across the room. He sat behind an imposing desk of polished walnut, papers spread before him. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, highlighting the silver at his temples, the fine lines around his eyes. He'd removed his suit jacket, and his crisp white shirt stretched across his shoulders as he leaned forward. "You wanted to see me," I said, remaining near the door. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit, please." I hesitated before complying, perching on the edge of the seat like a bird ready for flight. He noticed, of course. Dominic noticed everything. "How is she today?" he asked, his expression softening at the mention of Lily. "Tired, but in good spirits. She likes her new room." He nodded, pleased. "The physical therapist arrives tomorrow. Dr. Kaufman says we should start gentle exercises now, while the surgical wounds are still healing." "I know. I was there when he explained the treatment plan. Dominic's mouth twitched, acknowledging my defensiveness. Emma, we need to establish some parameters for this situation. Parameters? I repeated. You make it sound like a business arrangement. Isn't it? You're here because Lily needs medical care you can't provide. I'm providing it because she's my daughter. His gaze sharpened. A fact you concealed from me for 5 years. The accusation hung between us. I did what I thought was necessary to protect her, I said. From me, his voice remained even, but I saw the hurt beneath his controlled exterior. Her father. From your world, Dominic, from the violence, the danger, the constant threat. I leaned forward. Can you honestly tell me she would have been safe, growing up as Dominic Castellano's acknowledged daughter? How many enemies would have targeted her to get to you? He didn't answer immediately, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. Perhaps you're right, he said finally. Perhaps I couldn't have given her a normal childhood, but that choice wasn't yours alone to make. I was scared, I admitted. That night, seeing what you were capable of, what I was capable of, he stood abruptly, pacing to the window. You saw one side of my life, Emma, one necessary ugliness. You never stayed to see the rest. What rest? I asked. The money laundering, the extortion, the territories carved out through bloodshed. He turned, his expression hardening. The communities protected from worse predators. The businesses saved from bankruptcy. The families fed and housed and educated because I provided what the system would not. I'd heard these justifications before, in the early days when I'd questioned the source of his wealth. The Robin Hood defense, stealing from the corrupt to help the deserving. It held a grain of truth. I'd seen his generosity to those he considered under his protection. But the cost was paid in blood and broken lives. It doesn't matter now, I said, changing tack. What matters is Lily. What happens when she's recovered? Will you let us go? His laugh was devoid of humor. Let you go? Back to what, Emma? A waitressing job that barely covered rent? A life of constant moving, always looking over your shoulder? He approached the desk again, bracing his hands on the polished surface. Lily is my daughter, my blood. She stays with me. Fear coiled in my stomach. You can't keep her from me. I have no intention of separating you, he said, his voice softening. I want you both here, where I can protect you, where Lily can have everything she deserves. As what? Your prisoners? As my family. The simple declaration struck me silent. You were that once, Emma, or at least you were on your way to becoming that. Memories flooded back, candlelit dinners in his private rooms above the restaurant, weekends at this very estate, his rare, genuine laughter as he taught me to make his grandmother's pasta sauce. Before I'd discovered the truth, I'd been falling in love with him. Perhaps I'd already fallen. That was a different time, I said. A different me. Is it so different? He moved around the desk, closing the distance between us. You still care for me. I see it in your eyes, even as you try to hide it. I stood, needing to put space between us. What I feel doesn't matter. Lily's safety and happiness are all that count now. On that, we agree. He remained where he stood, allowing me the retreat. So, here is what I propose. You and Lily stay here, under my protection. She receives the best medical care, the best education, everything she needs to thrive. And you... He paused. And I what? You give us a chance, Emma. Not for what we had before, but for something new. Something built on truth this time. The offer hung between us, tempting and terrifying in equal measure. Part of me, a part I'd tried to silence for 5 years, wanted to say yes. To surrender to the pull between us, to the security he offered, to the family he promised. But another part remembered the blood on his hands, the darkness in his world. Before I could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, his expression darkening. I need to take this. I nodded, grateful for the interruption. I should check on Lily anyway. He caught my wrist as I turned to leave. Think about my offer, Emma, for Lily's sake, if not for your own. I pulled free gently. I will. As I reached the door, his voice stopped me again. Oh, and Emma, don't go beyond the gardens without security. Vasquez is still looking for you. His men were intercepted near the hospital yesterday. The casual mention of ongoing danger sent a chill through me. I nodded and left, making my way back to Lily's room with a heavier heart than when I'd left it. She was still sleeping, her face peaceful in repose. I sat beside her, watching the gentle rise and fall of her chest, the flutter of her eyelids as she dreamed. What kind of life could I give her now, on my own? Minimum wage jobs, cramped apartments, public schools with overcrowded classrooms, and without the specialized therapy she needed, what would her future hold? Here, with Dominic, she would want for nothing. The best medical care, the best schools, a future secured by his wealth and power. But at what price? Growing up in a world of shadows and secrets, where violence lurked behind every corner. Learning that her father's authority came not from respect, but from fear. A soft knock drew my attention to the door. Maria stood there with a garment bag. "Mr. Castellano thought you might need something to wear for dinner," she explained. "He's invited several specialists to discuss Miss Lily's treatment plan." I thanked her, and unzipped the bag after she left, revealing an elegant navy dress that looked exactly my size. Of course Dominic would remember my measurements, just as he'd remembered Lily's preference for extra cheese on her macaroni. As I fingered the expensive fabric, I realized Dominic had been planning this, our integration into his life, with meticulous care. The specially equipped room for Lily, the clothes in my size, the staff briefed on our preferences. He'd created a gilded cage, comfortable and luxurious, but a cage nonetheless. The question was, could I live in it for Lily's sake? Could I reconcile with the man I'd once loved, knowing what he was, what he did? And if I refused, what then? Would he still provide for Lily? Would he separate us, claiming his paternal rights? Or worse, would he simply make it impossible for me to leave, using his influence and resources to block any escape attempt? I had no answers, only the weight of an impossible choice pressing down on me. That evening, I wore the dress to dinner, entering the formal dining room to find Dominic in conversation with 3 distinguished-looking individuals, the specialists he'd mentioned. His eyes tracked me as I entered, appreciation evident in his gaze. For a moment, I was transported back to our early days, when his attention had thrilled rather than terrified me. "Emma," he said, crossing to escort me to the table. "Allow me to introduce Dr. Wagner from Berlin, Dr. Chen from Singapore, and Dr. Patel from London. They'll be consulting on Lily's rehabilitation." The dinner that followed was surreal. Discussions of cutting-edge treatments and recovery timelines over fine wine and gourmet food, all while armed guards patrolled the perimeter of the property. I contributed when asked about Lily's medical history, but otherwise remained quiet, observing Dominic in his element. Charming, authoritative, generous with praise and resources when it served his purpose. This was the man who held my daughter's future in his hands, the man who, despite everything, still held a piece of my heart. As the specialists outlined their comprehensive treatment plan, I realized I was already compromising, already adapting to this new reality. The question was no longer if I would stay, but how I would carve out some independence, some control, within the boundaries Dominic had established. For Lily's sake, I would find a way to survive in this beautiful, dangerous world. For my own sake, I would find a way to resist falling back under Dominic's spell completely. But as his eyes met mine across the table, dark and knowing, I wondered if that resistance wasn't already crumbling. 3 months passed in a carefully choreographed dance of proximity and distance between Dominic and me. We shared meals, attended Lily's therapy sessions together, even collaborated on designing a garden-level apartment that would be accessible for her wheelchair. Yet I maintained emotional barriers, retreating whenever our interactions threatened to cross into familiar intimacy. Lily, however, had no such reservations about her father. She'd taken to Dominic with a child's unguarded affection, delighted by his attention and the way he spoke to her as an equal. They shared a natural bond that sometimes made my chest ache with conflicting emotions, joy at seeing my daughter happy, fear of the influence he would inevitably have on her. "Look, Mommy," Lily called from across the sunroom, where she was working with her physical therapist. I moved my toes. I hurried to her side, watching as she concentrated fiercely, her small face scrunched with effort. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the toes of her right foot twitched. "That's amazing, sweetheart." I knelt beside her wheelchair, hugging her tightly. "You're working so hard." Dr. Patel, overseeing the session, nodded approvingly. "Excellent progress, Lily. The nerve regeneration therapy is showing results faster than we anticipated." "Will I walk again?" Lily asked, her voice small but determined. The doctor exchanged a glance with me before answering carefully. "This movement is a very positive sign. With continued therapy and possibly another procedure, you might regain some walking ability with assistance." It wasn't a promise of complete recovery, but it was more hope than we'd had immediately after the accident. Lily seemed satisfied, returning to her exercises with renewed determination. Later, after Lily had been settled for her afternoon nap, I found myself wandering the grounds. The estate's gardens were in full summer bloom, the air heavy with the scent of roses and freshly cut grass. 2 security men followed at a discreet distance, my constant shadows whenever I ventured outdoors. I'd grown accustomed to their presence, just as I'd grown accustomed to the luxurious imprisonment of the estate. My days had developed a rhythm: mornings with Lily, afternoons to myself while she rested, evenings of family dinners that felt almost normal, if not for the armed guards and occasional hushed phone calls that pulled Dominic away on mysterious business. I rounded a corner and nearly collided with Dominic himself, returning from the direction of the guest house that had been converted into his home office. "Emma," he greeted me, his expression warming. "I was just coming to find you. Dr. Patel told me about Lily's progress." "Yes, it's encouraging." I fell into step beside him, maintaining a careful distance. "She's so determined, like her mother," he observed, his eyes lingering on my face. I looked away, uncomfortable with the compliment. "She has your stubbornness," he laughed. Poor child, cursed with both our worst traits. The casual acknowledgement of our shared parenthood still felt strange after years of being Lily's only parent. Strange, but not entirely unwelcome. Dominic had proven himself a devoted father, rearranging his schedule to be present for Lily's milestones, learning her routines, even reading her bedtime stories. A sight that never failed to disarm me. "The specialists want to try a new procedure," I said, changing the subject. "Something experimental involving stem cells. They think it might help with the nerve damage." Dominic nodded. "Dr. Chen mentioned it. I've already approved the funding and arrangements." A flicker of irritation passed through me. Shouldn't that have been a decision we made together? He stopped walking, turning to face me fully. "You're right. I should have consulted you first." The admission surprised me. Dominic rarely acknowledged overstepping. "I'm used to making decisions unilaterally." "Well, when it comes to Lily, we decide together," I insisted. "I'm still her mother." "And I'm her father," he countered, his voice gentle but firm. "A role I'm still learning." The honesty in his tone disarmed me. For all his power and control in other areas of his life, fatherhood was new territory for Dominic. He was navigating it with the same intensity he brought to everything else, but there was a vulnerability to his efforts that he couldn't entirely conceal. We resumed walking, the silence between us more comfortable than before. "There's something else I wanted to discuss with you," Dominic said, as we approached a stone bench nestled among flowering shrubs. He gestured for me to sit. "The investigation into Vasquez's involvement in your accident has been completed." My pulse quickened. "And?" "It was a targeted attack, but not directed at you specifically. The driver was instructed to crash into any vehicle leaving my restaurant that night." His jaw tightened. "They were sending a message, because of the territory dispute?" I asked, recalling snippets of conversation I'd overheard between Dominic and his lieutenants. He raised an eyebrow, seemingly impressed by my awareness. "Yes. Vasquez believes he's entitled to expand his operations into the River District, which you control, which has been Castellano territory for 3 generations, he corrected. "But that's not your concern." "It is my concern when it puts Lily in danger," I countered. He reached for my hand and I let him take it, too preoccupied with worry to maintain my usual distance. "The situation with Vasquez is being handled," he said, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. "You and Lily are safe here." The familiar weight of those words, "being handled," settled in my stomach like a stone. I knew what it meant in Dominic's world. Someone would pay, likely with blood. Is this ever going to end? I asked, withdrawing my hand. The rivalries, the threats, the constant need for security? Dominic's expression shuddered. This is my life, Emma. The life you once knew you were entering. Before I knew what it really entailed, I reminded him, before I understood the cost, and yet here you are again. His voice softened. Perhaps because on some level, you understand the necessity of what I do, the protection I provide. I stood abruptly, needing to put space between us. I'm here for Lily's sake, not because I approve of your business. He rose as well, his height allowing him to look down at me with those penetrating dark eyes. Not just for Lily, he said quietly. You could have taken her to the Swiss clinic, accepted my financial support from a distance. But you came home with me. Why, Emma? The question struck at the heart of the contradiction I'd been living with for months. Why had I agreed to come to the estate, rather than accepting Dominic's offer to send us to Switzerland with private medical care? I don't know, I admitted. I think you do. He stepped closer, invading the careful space I maintained between us. I think you've missed us, as much as I have. Before I could respond, his phone rang. The interruption felt orchestrated, as though the universe itself conspired to keep our confrontations unresolved. Dominic checked the screen and frowned. I need to take this, he said. We'll continue this conversation later. I watched him walk away, phone pressed to his ear, his posture shifting subtly as he transitioned back into the role of the Mafia boss. The duality of his nature was what made him so dangerous to my resolve. The gentle father who read bedtime stories, and the ruthless leader who handled threats with calculated violence. That evening, I sat on the edge of Lily's bed, finishing the latest chapter in the book we'd been reading together. Mommy, she interrupted before I could begin the next chapter. Is Dominic my daddy? The question, though anticipated, still caught me off guard. Why do you ask that, sweetheart? She fidgeted with her blanket. Because Angela told me he is. She said everyone knows. Angela was the daughter of Dominic's head of security, a precocious 7-year-old who sometimes joined Lily for supervised playdates. I made a mental note to speak with her parents about discussing family matters with Lily. Is it true? Lily pressed. Is he my daddy? I took a deep breath. Dominic and I had discussed this moment, agreeing that when Lily asked, we would tell her the truth. Yes, honey, Dominic is your father. Her face lit up with a smile that pierced my heart. I knew it. We have the same eyes. And he always knows what I'm thinking, just like you do. You've suspected for a while, haven't you? I asked, smoothing her hair. She nodded. Why didn't you tell me before? It's complicated, sweetie. When you were a baby, your father and I, we couldn't be together. So I raised you on my own. Were you mad at him? Not mad, exactly. I chose my words carefully. I was scared. And I thought keeping you away from his life was the safest choice. But now we're all together, she said, with a child's simple logic. And we're safe here. Dominic has lots of people to protect us. The innocent observation highlighted the very paradox of our situation. The security Dominic provided existed only because of the danger his position created. Can I call him Daddy now? Lily asked, her expression earnest. I swallowed past the tightness in my throat. If you want to, I think he'd like that very much. She smiled, satisfied, and settled back against her pillows. Will you finish the chapter now? I continued reading, my mind elsewhere. Lily's acceptance of Dominic as her father changed things, cementing our connection to him in ways I hadn't fully anticipated. Her natural affection for him made my own resistance seem increasingly futile. Later that night, after Lily had fallen asleep, I heard a soft knock at my bedroom door. I opened it to find Dominic standing there, his usual suit replaced by casual trousers and a fitted black shirt. May I come in? He asked. I hesitated, then stepped aside. He entered, his presence immediately filling the spacious room. Lily knows, I said without preamble. She asked if you're her father. His expression shifted, vulnerability breaking through his composed exterior. What did you tell her? The truth. She wants to call you Daddy. He turned away, but not before I glimpsed the emotion in his eyes. And how do you feel about that? It doesn't matter how I feel. It's what she wants. It matters to me, he insisted, facing me again. Everything about you matters to me, Emma. The sincerity in his voice weakened my defenses. 3 months of careful distance, of reminding myself who he was and what he did, threatened to crumble in the face of his unwavering pursuit. Dominic, I began, unsure what I even wanted to say. He closed the distance between us, his hand coming up to cup my cheek. I've given you time, space. I've waited while you adjusted to this life, to my presence in Lily's life, but I can't wait forever, Emma. What are you asking? My voice was barely a whisper. Give us a real chance, he said. Not just co-parenting Lily, not just living under the same roof. Us, Emma, you and me. His proximity was intoxicating, awakening memories of passion and connection I'd tried so hard to suppress. For a moment, I allowed myself to imagine it, surrendering to the feelings I still had for him, becoming truly his again, but then reality intruded, as it always did. Your world hasn't changed, Dominic. It's still built on violence and fear. I've changed, he countered. Lily has changed me. You've changed me. Have you? I challenged. Would you give up your empire for us? Walk away from all of it? His hesitation was answer enough. It's not that simple. It never is with you. I stepped back, breaking the physical connection. I can't forget what I saw that night. What you're capable of. I'm capable of love too, Emma, he said quietly. I loved you then. I love you still. The declaration hung between us, weighted with all the complicated history and unresolved feelings we'd never properly addressed. Part of me wanted to tell him I loved him too. Because despite everything, despite the years apart and the danger of his world, I did. But love wasn't enough to bridge the fundamental divide between us. I need time, I said finally. He nodded, accepting the non-answer with surprising grace. Take it. But know this. I won't stop trying to prove to you that we belong together, that the three of us can be the family Lily deserves. After he left, I stood at the window, watching as he crossed the moonlit garden toward the main house. His security detail materialized from the shadows to flank him, a visual reminder of the world he inhabited, a world that had almost killed my daughter, a world that now protected her, a world I was increasingly unsure I could continue to resist. A week after Lily started calling Dominic Daddy, everything changed. I was in the garden with her, watching as she practiced transferring from her wheelchair to a garden bench, a skill her physical therapist had been working on, when I noticed the sudden tension in the security team. 2 men spoke urgently into their earpieces, while another scanned the tree line with narrowed eyes. Something was wrong. Dominic appeared moments later, his face a mask of controlled fury. He smiled for Lily's benefit, complimenting her on her progress, but his eyes met mine over her head with an unmistakable message. Danger. Emma, take Lily inside, he said, his tone casual despite the undercurrent of command. I believe it's time for her afternoon session with Dr. Patel. I nodded, understanding the unspoken urgency. Come on, sweetheart. Let's get you ready. As I wheeled Lily toward the house, I glanced back to see Dominic in intense conversation with his security chief, Marco. Their expressions confirmed my suspicions. Whatever threat loomed, it was serious. Later, after Lily was settled with her therapist in the specially equipped gym room, I sought out Dominic. I found him in his study, surrounded by his top lieutenants. A map of the city spread across his desk. They fell silent as I entered, but Dominic beckoned me forward. Emma should hear this, he told the others. It concerns her and Lily. Marco looked doubtful, but deferred to his boss. As I was saying, Vasquez's men were spotted at 3 different access points to the estate. Our perimeter guards intercepted them before they could breach the property, but it was coordinated, professional. They knew our patrol schedules. An inside source, Dominic concluded, his voice dangerously soft. Possibly, Marco agreed. We're investigating. But more concerning is this. He slid a folder across the desk. Dominic opened it, his expression darkening as he reviewed the contents. He passed it to me without comment. Inside were surveillance photos of me and Lily. At her doctor's appointment last week, in the car returning to the estate, even one of us in the garden just yesterday. Along with the photos was a handwritten note. The child for the territory, a fair trade. My blood turned to ice. They're targeting Lily? They're leveraging her to get to me, Dominic corrected, though the distinction seemed meaningless. Vasquez thinks I'll surrender the river district to protect her. And will you? I demanded, fear making my voice sharp. I don't surrender anything. His tone brooked no argument, but I do protect what's mine. The possessiveness in his voice should have angered me. Instead, it offered a strange comfort. Dominic, at his most dangerous, was also Dominic at his most effective. What happens now? I asked. He turned to his men. Triple the security detail. No one enters or leaves without my direct authorization. Move Emma and Lily to the secure apartment in the East Wing. The secure apartment was essentially a panic room disguised as living quarters, reinforced walls, bulletproof windows, emergency supplies, and a direct tunnel to an underground garage with escape vehicles. Dominic had shown it to me shortly after we arrived at the estate, just in case. We should move them tonight, Marco suggested, after the girl is asleep. I'll help her understand, I said, already planning how to present the change to Lily as an adventure rather than a necessary precaution. Dominic nodded, then addressed his lieutenants again. I want a complete security audit. Anyone who joined the staff in the last 6 months is to be thoroughly revetted, and I want our source in Vasquez's organization to report directly to me. The men nodded and filed out, leaving Dominic and me alone in his study. How serious is this? I asked once the door closed behind them. He didn't sugarcoat it. Vasquez is desperate. The cartel is pressuring him to expand his distribution network, and my territory is the most logical acquisition. Using Lily against me is a calculated move. But how did they even know about her? About our connection to you? Dominic's expression hardened. That's what I intend to find out. Someone close to us has been feeding information to Vasquez. The betrayal in his voice was palpable. In Dominic's world, loyalty was everything. Betrayal was unforgivable. What can I do? I asked, pushing aside my fear to focus on practical concerns. His eyes softened as he looked at me. Keep Lily calm. Make the move to the secure apartment seem natural. And Emma. He stepped closer, his hand coming up to cut my cheek. Trust me to handle this. I found myself leaning into his touch. I do, I admitted. God help me. But I do trust you to protect her. Something shifted between us in that moment. A barrier falling, a truth acknowledged. Whatever my feelings about Dominic's business, I believed absolutely in his commitment to keeping our daughter safe. That night, after explaining to Lily that we were moving to a special apartment where she could be closer to her therapy equipment, I helped her pack her favorite belongings. She accepted the change with a child's resilience, more concerned about whether her stuffed animals would come along than why we were moving. Dominic joined us for dinner in our new quarters, maintaining a facade of normalcy that impressed me. He read Lily her bedtime story as usual, his deep voice bringing the characters to life in a way that always made her giggle. Only I could see the tension in his shoulders, the alertness in his gaze as he periodically checked the security monitors discreetly installed in the corner of the room. After Lily fell asleep, Dominic and I retreated to the small living area of the secure apartment. How long will we need to stay here? I asked, keeping my voice low. Until I've neutralized the threat. He poured 2 glasses of wine, handing one to me. A few days, perhaps a week. I accepted the glass, our fingers brushing in the exchange. And then what? We go back to normal? Until the next threat? The next enemy who decides to use your daughter as leverage? He didn't miss my use of your daughter instead of our daughter. A subtle linguistic distancing that reflected my inner conflict. This is the last time, he said, his voice dropping to that dangerous register I recognized from years ago. After this, no one will dare target our family again. Because you'll kill Vasquez. It wasn't a question. Because I'll eliminate the threat permanently, yes. He didn't bother with euphemisms. Would you prefer I show mercy to a man who threatened our child? The question pierced through the moral certainties I'd clung to. If someone threatened Lily, would I want Dominic to respond with anything less than his full capacity for violence? The honest answer disturbed me. No, I admitted. I want Lily safe, whatever it takes. He nodded, unsurprised by my answer. "Then we understand each other." We sat in silence for a while, the wine untouched in my hand. Finally, I voiced the question that had been growing in my mind since the security breach. "If Vasquez is dealt with, will there just be someone else? Another rival? Another threat?" Dominic considered his answer carefully. "There will always be those who want what I have, but they can be discouraged from acting on those desires. Through fear. Through consequences," he corrected. "My father ruled through terror, making examples of anyone who crossed him. I've tried to be more surgical in my approach." It was a distinction without much difference to my mind, but I recognized the sincerity in his belief that he was different from his predecessor. "And Lily? What future does she have in this world of consequences? Will she inherit your empire someday? Learn to order executions and territory takeovers?" The question clearly struck a nerve. Dominic set down his glass, his expression troubled. "I've thought about that. About what legacy I'm creating for her. And," he met my gaze directly, "I've been making changes, legitimate investments, legal businesses, moving certain operations offshore, others into more regulated channels." "You're trying to go legitimate?" I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. "Not entirely. Not yet." He leaned forward. "But I'm creating options for Lily. A choice I never had." The admission surprised me. Dominic had always spoken of his position as family destiny, a mantle he'd assumed with pride after his father's death. "Why?" I asked. "You've always believed in the family business, in your right to control what your grandfather built." "Because of you," he said simply. "Because of what you showed me when you left. That there are lines some people won't cross, principles some won't compromise, and because I want my daughter to respect me, not fear me." The honesty in his voice was disarming. For the first time, I glimpsed a Dominic who might be capable of change, of growth beyond the rigid code that had defined him. "I want to believe you," I said. "But after this is over, after Vasquez is dealt with, what happens to us, to this fragile truce we've established?" He set his glass down and moved to sit beside me on the small sofa. "That depends on you, Emma. I've made my intentions clear. I want us to be a family, a real one, not just co-parents sharing custody. And if I can't accept your world, then I'll change it," he said with the simple confidence of a man used to bending reality to his will. "Not overnight, not completely, but enough that you can live with it, enough that Lily can be proud of her legacy." I wanted to dismiss his words as manipulation, as the easy promises of a man who would say anything to get what he wanted. But the intensity in his eyes, the vulnerability beneath his assured exterior, gave me pause. "I need proof," I said finally. "Not words, Dominic. Actions." "Fair enough." He reached for my hand and I let him take it. "Watch me, Emma. Judge me by what I do next, not just to Vasquez, but afterward. How I rebuild, how I reshape my organization. Then decide if you can accept me, all of me, as I am now." The offer was tempting, a chance to believe that the man I'd once loved, the father of my child, could evolve beyond the violent world he'd inherited. But skepticism kept my heart guarded. "I'll be watching," I agreed. 3 days later, the news reported a massive federal raid on Vasquez's operations. Simultaneously, a fire destroyed his main distribution warehouse, and his top lieutenants were either arrested or disappeared. Dominic didn't claim responsibility directly, but the precision of the coordinated strikes bore his signature. The mole in Dominic's organization was identified. A recently hired chef with connections to Vasquez's cousin. He vanished without a trace, though Dominic assured me he'd been dealt with humanely and relocated far from our city. Within a week, we moved back to our regular quarters in the main house. Life resumed its pattern: Lily's therapy sessions, family dinners, moments of surprising normalcy punctuated by reminders of Dominic's other life. But something had shifted. The threat to Lily had crystallized my priorities, forcing me to acknowledge that my daughter's safety mattered more to me than moral absolutes, and Dominic kept his word. Over the following months, I watched as he methodically restructured his operations. Legitimate businesses expanded while certain shadowy enterprises were quietly discontinued. Violence became a last resort, rather than a standard operating procedure. Territory disputes were settled through negotiation rather than bloodshed. He wasn't becoming a saint. There were still aspects of his business I chose not to examine too closely. But he was changing, evolving into something different from the Mafia boss I'd fled 5 years ago. As for us, the fragile connection between us strengthened with each shared milestone in Lily's recovery, each quiet evening spent in conversation after she was asleep, each moment of unexpected vulnerability. 6 months after the Vasquez incident, Lily took her first steps with the aid of specialized braces and a walker. Dominic and I stood on either side of her, our hands hovering near her shoulders as she moved slowly, determinedly across the therapy room floor. "I'm doing it," she cried, her face glowing with triumph. "Daddy, Mommy, look, I'm walking." "You are, Piccola," Dominic said, his voice rough with emotion. "You're the strongest person I know." When she reached the end of her short journey, we both embraced her, our arms naturally encircling each other as well. Dominic's eyes met mine over Lily's head, and the love I saw there, for our daughter, for me, broke through my final defenses. Later that night, after Lily's celebration dinner and bedtime story, Dominic walked me to my door as had become our custom. "She's remarkable," he said, "just like her mother. And as determined as her father," I added, smiling. He caught my hand before I could enter my room. "Emma, I've given you time. I've shown you the changes I'm making. Now I'm asking again. Give us a chance. A real one." I looked at him. This complex, dangerous, evolving man who had fathered my child, who had protected us with every resource at his command, who had begun to reshape his empire for the sake of his daughter's future. "Yes," I said simply, the decision feeling both momentous and inevitable. "Yes, Dominic. I'll give us that chance." His smile, rare, genuine, transformative, lit his features as he drew me into his arms. The kiss we shared was both a homecoming and a new beginning, a promise of a future neither of us could have imagined 5 years ago. Our path forward wouldn't be simple. Dominic would never be completely free of his past, his position, the power he wielded. But as his arms tightened around me, as his lips moved against mine with the passion that had always simmered between us, I knew we would find our way together, for Lily, for ourselves, for the family we were becoming, not perfect. Not entirely conventional, but ours.